Welcome to Local Matters. Are you stressed out? We're all feeling it to some extent, right? Which is why Julie invited licensed mental health counselor Leslie Cutler back on the show to talk about coping strategies for the stressors of life, especially when they're exacerbated by a global pandemic, national election, and an economic crisis. Here are Julie and Leslie.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. You know, there's a lot of tension right now in our society, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our towns, cities,
Yes.
and even in our country. With it being a election year, political demonstrations, right, left, green, blue, all the things are just nobody seems to be getting along. Do you
Yes.
have any advice to us during this rather tense time?
Oh, I do, Julie. And as if the holidays don't present enough stress in and of themselves, we have so many more things piled on top this year, which make things incredibly difficult. And I realize that we all have these kind of maladaptive ways of worrying and sort of dealing with some of these differences and some of this tension. And it's worrying, thinking that that's going to produce a certain amount of a result. It's sort of validation from others. So if you or I have a different opinion, then I'm going to access all the sources that I have that have similar opinions to me and just keep seeking validation from that. And there's a certain amount of letting go that we need to practice. We're not going to change our families' perspectives by having a very animated conversation over Thanksgiving dinner, but there's a certain acceptance of what is will be, and just learning to maybe keep certain topics off the Thanksgiving dinner table or the Christmas dinner table or whatever holiday you celebrate, and just know that at the end of the day, we have our health, we have our safety, and these are the important things that matter in this moment.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Good sage advice. And a lot of people won't be able to see their families during this holiday season due to social distancing, traveling, and people might feel a sense of loss and really depression.
Yeah.
How do we get through those feelings?
It's so interesting that you mentioned that because I was thinking as I was putting together some thoughts for this that, January 1st, 2020 of this year, as we were all celebrating the new year, none of us would have ever imagined that this year would look like this. And there's just so much uncertainty. And, I think we don't realize what our expectations are until they're not met. I mean, we all imagine ourselves celebrating with our family. And, the desire to do this is great because things have been so turned upside down that we want to run to what's familiar. But it's important to keep in mind that there are certain things that we're not going to be doing this year. And maybe there are other ways around it, recognizing, of course, that this is a very, very temporary thing. And for just this one time, we need to make an exception in order to keep moving forward in a healthy way.
And how do we keep ourselves from getting angry at people who aren't following the same guidelines or suggestions that we are following?
Well, I mean, I hear this every day in my office because I have situations where there are two people living together, and one is of compromised immunity, and the other one is out doing whatever and not feeling the same level of fear. So, we all have different ways of kind of managing this uncertainty and a lot of this kind of unknown. So the best thing is to take the information that we have and maybe draw up some compromises. Listen, I understand that you're going to do this year, but please know as a result of that, I'm going to do XYZ in return. And sometimes these compromises can be made, but sometimes they can't. And when it gets to that point, you need to really take care of your own safety. And, I've had clients that's had to move out of their apartments in the city and go live with family temporarily or, stay somewhere else because they couldn't come to that agreement. But of course, it is always a challenge, and communication is absolutely key on this.
Absolutely. Thank you. Again, great advice.
Yes.
And self care is really important. You have to take care of yourself and be comfortable with what you're doing. And in this year that's already so rough for everybody, and
Yes.
everybody's mindset is just all over the place. I know you have 5 basic tips
Yes.
for folks trying to get through the holidays. And number one is take action over the things you can control. Talk about
So there's a part of all of us that likes a certain amount of stability, of calm. And of course, there's a variation on this. We all have those friends that love to dive off of cliffs and bungee jump. And then we have people that in our lives that are the total opposite and prefer to stay home. And I get that. So we have different levels of tolerance in this. But if we're really struggling with feeling like things are out of our control and that this uncertainty is more than we can manage. We need to take the things in our lives that we can manage. Let's say, for an example, you're out of work and you're having major anxiety about, how am I going to feed my family? What am I going to do? There are certain things that you can do in that situation to manage it. You can, hit up local resources. You can, send out your resume, connect with friends and colleagues and network and that sort of thing. The same thing with the virus. It's like, yes, we can control how we are within this. So we take the pieces that we can manage and we hold on to them tightly. And perhaps we sit with some of the other uncertainties and not put on a brave face and pretend that everything is fine, because those feelings will then manifest its way in anxiety and depression. So it's kind of recognizing what it is, facing our feelings, realizing we can do what we can do, and then the rest just needs to be released.
right. So just the things you can control them, and the other things
Yes.
just take a deep breath, and this will not be forever, basically.
Yes. So
Um,
true.
I
Absolutely.
love the second one, which is challenge your need for certainty. Talk about that.
And I see this so often, not only in business, but also at home. There's this piece of us that constantly seeks reassurance from others, constantly needing validation. Is this decision okay? Am I making the right choice? This type of thing. And this gets played out also in the way that, some bosses like to micromanage their employees because they feel like they've got a better control of things. If they do it a certain way and they don't release it, there's also shows itself in the way of procrastination, of choosing not to make a decision because decisions are too terrifying and then they have to deal with the results. But we need to think about the advantages and the disadvantages of uncertainty. Life is full of surprises, and there are certain things that we can't anticipate for. But for every negative thing that happens, there's always a positive thing that happens. We might get, a dream job, and there's a certain surrendering that we have to do because there's no absolutes in life. I mean, every time we get behind the wheel, there's a certain release that we're trying to do. We've got to believe that the brakes are going to work today, that the car isn't going to come flying towards us. Or we go to a restaurant and we have to believe that the food is safe. So there's a certain amount of things in life that we have no control over. So it's important to kind of recognize these things and say, you know what? I deal with a lot of uncertainty on a regular basis, and I have the coping skills to kind of navigate these things.
Right. Yeah, and the old adage, the only thing that's absolutely certain are death and taxes.
Yeah,
Other than
oh,
that,
thank you. Yeah.
it's up in the air. So, so that was your need for certainty. So, how do we learn to really accept, and live through uncertainty?
Well, that's a bit of a challenge too. I always remind my clients, I say, you've managed these types of uncertainties before, and you've had all the necessary tools to navigate them. And at some point, you just have to trust your own coping skills. Recognize what your triggers are as well. If sitting in front of the news 24/7 on a solid loop is triggering you in some way, well, clearly that's not going to be helpful for you. Or if you're spending a ridiculous amount of time on social media, reading stories that might be true or might not be true, that is not helpful. So recognize your triggers and then recognize that it's okay. Feel it in your body, recognize where it is. For me, it's holding my jaw tight. I realize I put my shoulders up often and I'm spending the day with clenched fist, tight jaw and shoulders up. And this tells my body that I'm in absolute panic and it needs to step up everything. And that is not the case at all. This is a long-term thing. We're in month 9 of a pandemic. We're in the middle of major political upheaval. It's going to change. This too will pass. Recognizing that and ask, what is it that I'm required to do in this moment? And I always bring it back to the present so that I'm not obsessing about the future. So right now, it's you and me, and we're having this conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm going to do this now and be completely present. And then later on, I will approach the next item like that. And so to continue to be mindful and aware.
Right. So that kind of goes into your fourth point, which was focus on the present. And just to backtrack one sec, on the idea of uncertainty. I know my kids; they both live in California. They're 27 and 30 years old, and they, of course, have never seen anything like this. None of us have.
Right.
And I always go back to the fact that most people are good people, and
Yes.
we have brilliant people in this world. Just the fact that this vaccine is being developed so
Yes.
quickly,
Yes.
lightning speed versus anything that's ever been done in the past.
Right.
To me, that gives me great hope. And the fact
Yes.
that if your neighbor cries for help, you run over to help them.
Yes.
There's good people in this world, and I don't think they're going away anytime soon. So
Right.
let's talk about then focusing on the present, which was your fourth point.
Yes. Yeah. And when you're saying that, I'm thinking, if somebody's crying for help, you're not asking them their political affiliation. There's something in all of us that will dive in, offer the skills that we have, and help when necessary. And there's a certain amount of that we need to sort of, bring to the surface as a reminder that at the end of the day, we are all fully connected on some level. But, in talking about mindfulness, I find it's really helpful for myself is to have a regular routine. No matter what's going on that day, I try to keep, this regular hike with my dog Smudge a part of my day. And I pay close attention to, the rhythm of my feet hitting the ground, the leaves underneath, and try to pay attention. And I leave my phone at home. I check in with myself and my body, and I'm dealing with the immediate and the now. And it's too easy to get distracted into all these other things. But this worry is not going to solve anything whatsoever. It will only make it worse for myself. So, just keep with the familiar, keep with the regular day to day is probably going to be one of the biggest ways to manage anxiety.
Right. Just one day at a time. Just take it as it comes and do what you
Yes.
have to do to get through that day, because there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow is going to be better and brighter. And your
Yes.
first thing is actually, how do you manage your stress and
Right.
what's the best way to do that?
So, like I said, anxiety is best managed through regular exercise. And, you don't need to go to the gym and, do a full blown workout, but it's really just about getting out in nature. Nature is, our natural serotonin lift, get moving. Maybe take some time for relaxation in the day, perhaps even some meditation. And of course, as always, watching our diet and getting plenty of sleep. And I know these things are beaten into all of our heads, and, it's exhausting kind of hearing them, but there's really something to them. And they are key in terms of helping a sense of and creating a sense of calm in all of this uncertainty.
Right. And it doesn't cost anything to take a walk, or
No, it does not.
or to
It
leave your
doesn't.
phone at home and just unhook for a while. I totally agree with you.
Yes.
And for people who have been able to continue working,
Yes.
I think they're working more hours, harder, for less, really for less, like the restaurants, for example. I
Oh,
feel horribly for everyone in that industry right now, because they are really, really suffering. But you see them every day coming up with new ideas, new ways to make it work until we
yes.
get on the other side of this thing. So hope springs eternal. Absolutely.
Absolutely, it does. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
absolutely. And it forces us to be a little kinder to those out on the front lines who are just, working so hard and have done this for 9 months in, while so many other people have the luxury of being at home and being able to be safe within their homes. So,
And yet, a lot of people would say it's not been a luxury to be at home. that's they find just as stressful as if they had to go to work, if not more so, especially the parents that have to suddenly become teachers, which must be horribly stressful if you're not used to that.
Right, right. And trying to juggle at home work with children can be quite a challenge, especially for, single parents. And I'm, tell, preaching here to my own choir, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a challenge. And, it's not always going to be perfect.
Right,
And
right,
it's
right,
okay to say, you know what? We're done for today
right,
because this is all we can do.
right.
And we're going to give it our best shot tomorrow, but we will revisit it once again and go from there.
Excellent. Right. And I know you said you are busier than you have ever been as a licensed mental health counselor. What is the best way for people to get in touch with any counselor if they feel they really need one?
Yeah, I think everybody's really busy right now because the world in general is feeling a lot of stress and anxiety. I really like going to psychology.com. They have a list of therapists on there. You can type in, what you're looking for, male, female, a certain type of person that specializes in any particular thing. And they will bring up a number of people, not only in your area, but also those who offer telehealth as well. You can search by insurance, you can search by, a number of criteria, and that's a great place to start. So I highly recommend that.
That's wonderful, wonderful advice. And you're right. We've heard from a lot of people that they wanted to get appointments and there are just no appointments available because
Unfortunately.
I don't think there's anybody out here in this world that isn't at least a little bit stressed right now.
Yes, myself included. So,
Yeah.
we're all in this.
All of us. And like you said, one day at a time, do the best you can and self-care. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone around you.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Leslie, as always, wonderful advice, sage advice from a wonderful woman. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Julie. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Leslie. It's good to remind ourselves that we're not powerless or alone in how we feel.